Hello friends. Last week, while going through my archive of KP notes, I came across an article by Shri Krishnamurti, and I thought it is worth sharing. That article is worth sharing. I'm not sure if I have already discussed this article in any of my previous videos. Even then, this article is worth repeating, as it highlights the two core principles of Krishnamurti Paddhati. One is the grouping of the houses, and second is the concept of the significators. KP rule is that an event happens when two or more houses join hands together. This is a very unique finding of the Krishnamurti Paddhati. And before I explain you this table, and these categories: very good, good, mixed, bad, very bad. This is taken from that article by Shri Krishnamurti. The first question that we have to ask is, and if you look at this example horoscope with Aries ascendant, and usually for Aries ascendant, we have an assumption that Aries people are prone to accident, wound, cuts, and etc. And the reason for that is that Mars, which is the lord of the first house, also becomes the lord of the eighth house. But does it hold true for every single person with Aries ascendant? This is one of the questions that Sri Krishnamurti had on his mind, because for Aries this is a default grouping. The Mars is going to appear the ascendant lord and the eighth lord. And but this is not true that every single Aries person will meet with an accident. And additionally, it is also not true that a person, an Aries ascendant person going through Mars DVA will meet with an accident. So this is where the concept of the grouping of Krishnamurti's Paddhati and the role of significators come in. But first, let's look at this particular table. And this table is, and I'm going to interpret this table in the light of this Aries ascendant. Now let's look at Mars. Mars for Aries ascendant. Mars rules the houses 1 and 8, which is self-destructive. Now all these texts from that particular article by Shri Krishnamurti. Mars rules the house 1 and 8 we discuss, which is self-destructive, and planet in the star or sub of Mars will cause failure. So this particular table shows the grouping of the houses for all the ascendant from the Aries to the Pisces. So 1 and 8, 1 and 8, if you look here, the 1 and 8 is bad. We know why 1 and 8 is bad. Let's look at Venus. Venus owns the houses 2 and 7. It means that Venus owns the house 1 and 8 to the opponent. This is very important. Venus owns the house 1 and 8 to the opponent. As Lord of 8 is to throw obstacles and bring about loss, it is bad to the opponent, hence it is positive for you. This particular table in that article is more from the the lucky sign or lucky house grouping for each of the ascendant. The whether the person is going to lose money, or whether the person is going to gain money, or whether the person is going to come out successful in litigation, election, competition, etc. So this particular article has that kind of a focus. Now, one more thing you notice was that Krishnamurti says that the planet in the star or sub of Mars will cause failure. So this is very important. Like we mentioned that for Aries ascendant, the Mars by default is the lord of the 1 and 8. So it's not that the accident will happen only in Mars Dasha Bhukti Antra. In Krishnamurti Paddhati, this particular role is taken over by a planet that's usually called a significator. So a planet in the star or sub of Mars will enable this grouping, the first and eighth, and that planet will become more powerful to prone accident compared to the uh, the the Mars. So this is like a, you have to understand the concept of the true significators in Krishnamurti Paddhati. For example, if you look at the Aries ascendant, Jupiter becomes the Lord for the ninth and 12th. This is the default grouping. Now 9 and 12 usually means long journeys or going to foreign countries. But is it that every person with Aries ascendant, when they go through Jupiter, Dasha or Bhukti or Antara, will go to a foreign country? But that doesn't happen. So a planet which is deposited in the star of Jupiter will be more powerful. That will become the significator. That will become the primary significator of responsible for this and this grouping. So let's now look at the Mercury. Mercury rules the house 2 and 6. Now in the Venus, it says that it is good for you because 2 and 7 is 1 and 8 to the opponent. So let's look at Venus, and for Aries ascendant, you see this appears over here 2 and 7, very good. Mercury rules the house 3 and 6. Third and sixth, both houses are good according to KP. So it gives success in litigation, financial assistance, receipt of entangled money. Third house is mostly for the assistance. So one will have assistance for raising debts and all that. And another thing that if you read Krishnamurti's books, then you will find that 3 and 6 combination, it usually results in some kind of a dispute or quarrel with your neighbors, or uh, or with the younger siblings. That's also indicated by the third house. Or there is some dispute while making a short journey. So third and sixth, because sixth house is for dispute and all that. So this is how you have to interpret. But for money purpose, 3 and 6 is good. So the planet in the star or in the sub of Mercury gives success in election, competition, and it also brings in money. So let's look at the 3 and 6, and in this table you find it under the category good. Then Jupiter owns a 9 and 12, and success during the period of the planet in the star or sub of Jupiter is out of question. I just discussed another role of Jupiter, where by virtue of being the ruler of 9 and 12, it is also responsible for bringing the foreign journeys or the long journeys. But in terms of making money, and since this article and this particular table is primarily for the lucky signs in terms of or lucky house grouping in terms of making money, so 9 and 12 is not good, because 3 and 6 is good for you. So anything that is good for you is bad for your opponent, and anything that is good for your opponent is bad for you. So 9 and 12 becomes 3 and 6 for your opponent. So it is good for your opponent and it is bad for you. So if we look at 9 and 12, then you find it appears over here. Don't get confused. This particular bad is only for from the angle of making money. When it comes to interpreting whether this person is going to make a foreign journey or not, then 9 and 12 takes on a different meaning. Saturn is Lord of 10 and 11. This is obvious to you. You know that this is a very good combination. The Sun and Moon has not been discussed, and because they own only one house, and so it depends in what kind of star or sub they are. And but fifth house is obviously not a good house in Krishnamurti Paddhati. So when you look at this particular table and these grouping, and then you understand that what house grouping means in terms of in KP astrology, and more importantly how a planet becomes significator, how a planet becomes responsible in enabling that handshaking between these two houses. I know this is a little bit of oversimplification, but if you are a kind of a beginner in KP, and sometimes this house grouping and significator concept is a little confusing, but this particular article, this particular table, and this particular explanation by Shri KSK is more than sufficient to give you a good idea that what exactly is meant by house grouping and the significators in KP. Now let's look at one example. We'll take a house grouping and let's take this example of a chart and let's look at the accident. The combination is 1, 8, 12 because the first house is I haven't taken the fourth house. A lot of people, they take fourth house, and four you can also take, but I have just taken 1, 8, 10, 1, 8, 12, which frequently appears in KSK's rule. So one indicates the self or the body, eighth indicate the danger to the body, and 12th indicate the hospitalization. So obviously, if somebody is going to hospital, that means that could not be a minor, accident. And now this is a South Indian style of layout. So for those of you who are more familiar with the South Indian style of format, please make a screenshot. As in the rest of the discussion, I will be using the North Indian format. I have I have also given the birth data. So if you want to run against whatever astrology application that you have. This is the North Indian Rashi and KP chart. And let's look at the cusp chart with the relevant tables of significators. And so now this is the Libra ascendant. So if you look at the Libra ascendant, so by default Venus becomes the lord of the ascendant and also the lord of the eighth house. So Venus has that kind of a potential, but more powerful than Venus is the planet that is deposited in the star of Venus. So for that, then we have to look at this particular column, the star lord column, and we find that the Venus, which is the lord of 1 and 8, and if you look at moon, right, moon is deposited in the star of Venus, and then you also find that Venus is also in the star of Mars. So Venus is also bad because Mars indicates accident. It's already in the eighth house, and Venus is already the lord of the first and the eighth house. And then you have Jupiter. So these at least three planets that we can immediately see that these three planets are not good. And if you look at the 12th house, then you see the Mercury is here in the 12th. Moon is also here in the Mercury sub, so it is also indicating the 12th house. And then you have Venus is there, Moon is there, and Jupiter is not indicated. 5, 4, 5 is actually good. It indicates that if a person is going through or have gone through some bad period or an accident, then the recovery from that process will be handy and immediate. So Jupiter has that kind of a role, but still, being a significator of 1 and 8 is not good. It does indicate the danger to the body. So now this person met with an accident in Jupiter, Venus in October 2014. So now we see the how this particular grouping 1, 8, and 12, and how these planets, by virtue of being in the star and south, created this grouping, and that eventually resulted in an accident. It didn't happen in the Mars period. See, normally you think that Mars is in the 8th, so Mars will bring about the accident. But since here, the Mars has nothing to do with this particular combination, so that's why Mars didn't bring about the accident. It was Jupiter, Venus. So this is a very simple example where you can immediately see the Krishnamurti's two core principles: the house grouping and the role of the significators. So, but once you have mastered these house grouping and the significator rules, which are very easy to learn, then you have to navigate into what I called as a challenging territory, because in this territory you might have a lot of questions, and you will not find those pointers or those answers in Krishnamurti's books, especially when it comes to the natal astrology. So in for example, in this chart you might want to ask the question, why accident only in Jupiter Dasha, and why Jupiter Venus. So the Swa Bhukti, Swa Antra, how do you make it out? We saw that Moon was one of the powerful significator. Jupiter also there. So it could have been Jupiter, Venus, Moon, or it could have been Jupiter, Moon, Venus. In 2019, this gentleman went through Jupiter, Moon, Venus, and I have no information if he met any accident or not. So these are the question, and then next question you might have that, will this particular event likely to repeat itself? So these are the questions. This is what I call the a challenging territory in the Krishnamurti's natal astrology. Not too much of pointers are available, but recently I was going through some of the Krishnamurti's books, and there were some couple of good hints Krishnamurti has given on about how to interpret these particular questions, and other questions also, without the use of the ruling planet. So I will share my own thoughts and observation in some other video, and thanks for watching.